to order our meeting this evening. So I'd like to call to order the Bradford Exempted Village Board of Education October 15th meeting. And if we could stand for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Swab.
Here.
Mrs. Brewer. Mr. Biesecker.
Here.
Mr. Manuel.
Here.
Mrs. Hill. Here.
I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening on this nice and warm fall day. And begin our meeting with the reviewing and approval of our minutes and agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda that's printed? If not, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Scott and Trey, a second. Roll call for approving the agenda.
Mr. Manuel.
Yes.
Mrs. Hill.
Yes.
Dr. Swab.
Yes.
Mr. Biesecker.
Yes.
Next item we have is approving our September 30th and September 11th meeting minutes that were in our packet for review. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thanks, Trey. And a second?
Second.
Thanks, Holly. Any discussion, questions, or additions, deletions, or changes? If none, roll call for approving the minutes as presented.
Mrs. Hill.
Yes.
Dr. Swab.
Yes.
Mr. Biesecker.
Yes.
Mr. Manuel.
Yes.
Next item is our student spotlight. So I'd like to turn it over to our administrator.
So, we're going to start off our student spotlight with the wonderful second grade teachers who are here to tell you about their nominees. So I will turn the floor over to them.
You want to call them up?
Yeah, you can call them up. I'd say, but, I mean, you want to stick an arm around them? That works too.
I don't know about that, but we'll hug it out a little bit. All right, this is Corey. So I am nominating Corey Howard as this month's student spotlight. Corey is 7 years old and lives at home with his mom and sister. Corey enjoys riding roller coasters, popping wheelies on his dirt bike, and eating steak rare at, I almost said Taco Bell, at Texas Roadhouse. Pretty much he likes living life on the edge. At school, Corey loves playing mushroom ball at recess and reading Dogman books in the classroom. At school, Corey is an extremely hard worker. He is always committed to trying and doing his absolute best. Corey's kind, caring, and friendly character make him a role model for all classmates. Corey tackles new challenges seriously and with a positive attitude. Above all, Corey can always be counted on to be a friend to all. When Corey grows up, he wants to be a mailman to get daily exercise. He hopes to do this in New Jersey, though, because there are lots of fun things to do that way, and of course, the beach. If he could change anything in the world, it'd be to end boredom. I'm eager to see what great things Corey will accomplish throughout this second grade year. Keep being you, Corey. Great job, Corey, and congratulations. I think they're gonna take a picture of us.
We are.
Oh, I got hair memo.
Congratulations.
Nice job, bud. No?
Sorry. Okay, this is Amelia. I'm nominating Amelia Minnick for this month's Student Spotlight. Amelia is 8 years old and lives at home with her mom, dad, and older brother Jonah and her dog Luna. Amelia has many ambitions for what she wants to be when she grows up. She wants to be an artist, an art teacher, a dentist, or someone who 3D prints. Her favorite color is turquoise, and she loves to ride her four-wheeler, play with her dog, listen to Taylor Swift, and play with her friends. Amelia's favorite thing to do at school is art because she likes to do arts and crafts and is very creative. Amelia is an outstanding student to have in the classroom. She is kind, considerate, hardworking, and all around a wonderful person. Amelia is a hard worker in class and will always help others or ask questions when she is unsure of something. She always puts others first and makes sure to help if there is a problem. Amelia will always help to cheer someone up and is constantly doing little dance moves in class when she is happy. Amelia strives to do her best and work hard in and out of the classroom. Great job, Amelia, and congratulations.
You need to start doing tutorials of how you do them, because sometimes we'll examine them just to see how you do it, and then I practice at home.
Oh, my.
So, next we've got the junior high school, and our next student was nominated by Mrs. Estes, is Johnny Stewart. This is what Mrs. Estes had to say about Johnny. I'm nominating Johnny Stewart as this month's student spotlight. Johnny has been in my class since 6th grade. This year, Johnny is a sophomore who has really progressed in his art talent. Observing Johnny so far this year in class, I have been very impressed with his work ethic and his willingness to try his best. His projects have been wonderful, and I'm very proud of him. Johnny has been working so diligently that I hardly know he's in class. I hope his talent continues to blossom, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the year has in store for him. I'm proud of you, Johnny. Keep up the great work. Great job, Johnny. Congratulations. And last but not least, our final student is Emma Hartzell, who's so excited to be here, I can tell. She was nominated by Mrs. Myring. This is what Mrs. Myring had to say. I am nominating Emma Hartzell as this month's student spotlight. Emma is a very bright student who always tries her best. In class, she always gets her work completed in a timely manner, and it is done well. Emma is a very kind and polite student that helps in the classroom with their peers when they ask. Congratulations, Emma, and thank you for your efforts in the classroom. Great job, Emma.
I would like to thank everyone for coming, and we'll pause our meeting if the students and the parents want to go home and finish their evening. And I think we got some photos to do out there.
I'm in charge of pictures.
Yep. And thanks everyone for coming. We appreciate your attendance, and it's always a joy to see you guys do such a great work.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So the next thing is we're going to talk about the grade card. Mr. Hurst has asked us to give a report on last year's grade card. So if you haven't had a chance to see last year's grade card, overall, we scored a 3, which meets state standards. Not as good as it was last year. Last year was a lot more exciting to be up here telling you about how we improved. This year we've had a little slips, and for some of the slips, we kind of have an idea of why it happened. Others we're still trying to figure out. So we received 3 stars in achievement. We had 3 stars last year. In progress, 2 stars. We had 3 stars last year. Gap closing, 2 stars. We had 3 stars last year. Graduation rate, 5 stars. Early literacy, 3 stars. Both of these are what we had last year. So this is our performance index. So the graphs basically show how our students did, whether they were advanced, accomplished, proficient, basic, or limited. And this is over the last few years. And if you notice, we dropped a little bit. Our performance index was still higher than it was 2 years ago. So while we dropped, we didn't drop as far as we dropped 2 years ago. So we didn't lose exactly all the gains that we gained the previous year. And we're still, so if you add the last 4 years, this year's report card is still the second highest. Not where we want to be. We want to see this keep going up. But like I said, it was a slip. Next slide, please. So the next few slides are just kind of showing how we did. We're in the red versus similar districts that the state picks. So they've got a formula to determine which schools are similar districts to other schools. They're in the blue, and then the state average is in the yellow. So for 3rd grade, while we didn't score as good as similar districts, in mathematics, we did score better in the state. In language arts, not so much. 4th grade, mathematics scored better than the state. English language arts, not so much. And then 5th grade, English, pretty much even with the state. The other two we scored better than the state. Next slide, please. 6th grade, same type of thing. Not as good as the state, not as good as similar districts. 7th grade, just put these in here. 7th grade over here. Mathematics, not as good. English, not as good. One of the things I want to point out about 8th grade, because as you take a look at this, it is much lower. In years past, our 8th graders took Algebra 1. This last year was the first year that some of them went into Algebra 1, some of them went into 8th grade. So we had, for really the first time, outside of kids that were in a resource room, they were actually taking the 8th grade test. Now, when you have some of the kids going to Algebra 1, those kids tend to be the ones that are, a little bit more advanced. You've taken that whole section out of there. So we're dealing with a smaller number. We're also dealing with students that need that extra year of math. Now, what we're hoping is when we take a look at this year's scores, and if you flip the slide, what we're hoping is our algebra scores, because that group of kids have now had that 8th grade class, they've had an extra year of math, we're going to see both algebra and geometry scores go higher. The reason why we did this is we realized that they were missing some things that they would get in 8th grade, jumping from 7th to that freshman level class. So we're hoping that does improve our geometry scores because they'll have more geometry in 8th grade than they would have if they just took algebra. So if you look at our scores here, algebra, we did actually better than both similar districts and state. Biology, not as good. American history, not as good. English language arts, not as good. Geometry, not as good. Or American U.S. government. But a couple things here. Our geometry scores and our Algebra 1 scores actually went up more than they did last year. So those were two areas that if you look at this, it doesn't look as good, but we still did better than we did last year. So this is progress, and this is whether or not our students met value added. Value added is they did a year's growth in 1 year, regardless if they passed the test or not. You can pass the test and still not do a year's growth, or you can fail the test and do more than a year's growth, depending on where you start and where you end up. The problem with this, I can't really tell you a whole lot about it because we don't have the scores yet. They're coming out next Monday.
Yes.
So, or sometime next week.
Yeah, I was to say it's next week.
Yeah, so they're coming out next week. Once we're able to actually tear apart and figure out why the kids did what they did, we'll have a better grasp as to why we were proficient. And the green means that they met expectations. The yellow means that they were, they didn't meet expectations. The red meant that there was significant evidence that they didn't meet expectations by a larger margin. And the dark gray is they did above what we expected out of them by a large margin. So if you look at 7th grade language arts and American government, our students they grew more than a year, they gained more than a year's growth. So, and then the just gray meant there's no value added available. So we don't have any data for that. So once again, we're not quite sure why this happened. We'll know more after next week. Early literacy, we scored a 75.9. This is actually greater than we did last year. Give you guys an idea. In proficiency in 3rd grade, we scored a 69.2. Last year, that was 60.5. In promotion to 4th grade, it was 100%. Last year was 100%. And improving K-3 literacy was a 53% this year. Last year was a 49.5. So this is a very important one because if our kids can't read in the younger grades, they're just going to struggle throughout. We are hoping to continue to see this grow. As our teachers are becoming more and more used to the science of reading, which they've have been basically drowning in the science degree need. We're hoping to see that increase even more. Next slide, please. Graduation rate. Let's go to 97.2%. Last year it was a 94.3. We had one student that didn't graduate. That student deferred graduation to continue to take schooling over at the Career Center. So had that student not deferred graduation, we would have had 100%. And then our 5-year score is 100%. So this is the one that I'm really, if you take a look at everything in the grade report card, in a lot of ways, I think this is the most important. Because at the end of the day, we're here to make sure that our students are successful when they graduate. Whether it's in college, whether it's in the workforce, whether it's in the military, we want our students to be successful. So we went and we actually took a look at, Miami County did the Miami County, the SC did the Miami County. I went back through to figure out how we did in Dark County. So these are all the Dark County, Miami County schools. We had a 77.8% readiness score. So outside of FM, Covington, Versailles, Newton, and Milton Union, we had the 6 highest out of the 2 counties. So we are, our students are definitely better prepared when they leave here than the majority of the schools in darker Miami County. And that's what I think is pretty important. I'm not saying that the other achievement things aren't important, because they are. We want kids to know how to read. We want them to be able to do math in 4th grade. But at the end of the day, I want our kids to be successful when they graduate. I want them to, whatever they decide to do, whether it's to go to college, whether it's to enter the workforce, whether it's to go in the military, I want them to be successful. And this shows us that the majority of our students are successful when they graduate.
And there are multiple pathways to graduation at the high school level, and we don't have to utilize those at Bradford. Very few times have we used those in my now 4 years here at Bradford for students to graduate with a diploma. So, even though at the lower grades and through middle school and high school, test scores that you need to have minimum scores in order to pass and to get your diploma, our students end up getting that while they're in high school. It may not happen at the grade level in which they're taking it, but it does happen after the fact. So, we are making up ground, which is another reason why that score is as high as it is, because we're not using a ton of pathways. Our students are completing all of their projects and capstone projects and doing well on their assessments at the Career Center, along with what they do here as well. So, I just kind of hit off of what Bob was saying. Yes, being able to get a year's growth during your 4th grade year, your 6th grade year, yeah, those things are extremely important. And we're going to continue to strive, which is why we outlined the goals that we had for you guys last month. But if we don't hit it that particular year, it does happen later in their high school career, which allows them to leave these doors where we feel very comfortable they're going to be very successful.
So when we looked at, and by the way, this is kind of what angered me about this whole thing, is the one area in which we did really well isn't included in our report card grade.
This year.
Next year it will be, but this year it wasn't. So probably the highlight of our report card, we didn't even get graded on when it came to the stars that I showed you at the beginning. So I told you, we kind of sat down and tried to figure out why our report card looked the way it did. And the most obvious thing is last year in the elementary, we had 2 new teachers, first year teaching, and 2 tested subjects. We had another teacher who had moved to a different position in a tested subject. We had, at the high school, we basically reshuffled the math department. So all of our math teachers were teaching new subjects, plus one of those teachers was a brand new teacher. That is going to have an effect on how well our kids are going to do. It takes a little bit of time. I'm sure you guys all started your career somewhere. You weren't as good in your first year as you were in your second, third, or fourth year. And it's going to take a little bit of time for our teachers to get that figured out. We're trying to give the teachers the best tools that we can. And that's one of the reasons why we were really focusing on data. So if you turn to the next slide. So how are we addressing our weaknesses? Last month, you saw the district goals. One of those district's goals is we were asking our students to set, or our students and teachers to set data-driven goals. So every student who is getting tested this year will have a goal as to where they want to be at, based on the test that the readiness test, which basically the readiness test is,
It's an indicator of how they could potentially do on the actual statewide.
but it's actually through the state, and it looks and acts just like the state test. So when the kids take the readiness test, they're preparing for the state test. And it gives us the exact same scores that the state test does. It shows where the students were weak at. It shows where they were strong at. And our teachers are taking a look at that data. We spent time we had a PD day last week during Pumpkin Show where our teachers actually looked at that to determine how, started to tear that apart, to figure out how they can be better teachers based on what those readiness scores will show. They'll take another readiness assessment later in the year, take a look at how their students progress, where they need to fix it. So we're confident that with just this, and you add a year of experience for all those teachers that were teaching the subjects for the first time, that will make up the minor losses that we had from last year's report card. And that's it. So we're not happy. I don't think there's anybody in this building nobody wants to take a step back. But you can live in the past and just focus on the past, or you can say, okay, this is what happened. Get up off the mat. How am I going to go forward? And our teachers, we're making sure that the teachers just don't get complacent with what they teach, especially in those tested subjects. We want them to continue to strive to do better. And we're holding them accountable for that. So, you guys have any questions? There's a lot in that report card.
Is our curriculum not, we're having to do the readiness assessments, is our curriculum?
So what the readiness assessment is it's something, it actually came out right after COVID, and it was the state's attempt to kind of help them out. It is probably by far the best indicator because it's apples to apples.
Right.
Our curriculum works. Our curriculum has assessments in it that they do. What the readiness assessment does is, since it's the state test, it's tied. It gives us the exact same data the state test does. Our curriculum doesn't always give us that apples to apples.
So the readiness assessment is just a matrix too.
Right. Yeah. So and it's produced by Ohio State. So most curriculums in the country are designed for California and Texas. Those are the two biggest markets. So they'll give you, if you go out and buy curriculum, they'll give you the little, okay, you got this. This is kind of what we think it's going to look like in Ohio. The readiness assessment is designed by the same people who designed the Ohio State test. So it is the best indicator on how we think our students are going to do.
So is that what our curriculum should be designed around?
By and large, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, by and large, the way
This-
our mapping and the way we structure how we
It's-
teach, teachers have the ability, the readiness assessment you give start of the year, and then we will give it sometime typically in end of February, 1st of March before testing. That way it'll give us an idea of where the students are. And at that point in time, and any weaknesses that we may see, we will do intervention leading up to testing. Or even sometimes during testing, but they can do benchmarks throughout the course from the first test to the second one. So there's smaller segments where they're getting an idea of if Ryan Schultz is teaching, something in his physical science or in his 8th grade science class, he can go ahead and give them that test based on what he's teaching that matches up with the state content standards.
So our curriculum is all based on state standards.
Mhm.
And our teachers are teaching the curriculum. What the readiness assessment does is, and the reason why we give it at the beginning of the year is to determine, okay, I'll give you an example. When we looked at the readiness example, me and Mrs. Levy were looking at fourth grade math, we realized that there was a section that the kids totally bombed on. And as we started to tear that apart, we realized, well, they didn't have that. It was geometry. They didn't have geometry in third grade. So of course they're going to do horrible on that. Whereas say mathematical functions, there's some carryover from third grade to fourth grade. By giving it in the beginning of the year, it shows you what that carryover is. So if the kids came out of third grade really great in multiplication, well, maybe I spent the first 3 weeks teaching multiplication because that's what the textbook says. But after looking at the readiness example, maybe I don't need to. Maybe I only have to do it for 2 weeks, which saves me a week later. So it kind of shows the teachers where the strengths and the weaknesses are. When they take it again in February, it'll show, okay, we had multiplication in September. How much do they remember by February? Well, they still got it. We're good, we can move on. Oh, they maybe lost a little bit of it because it's been a while. So I need to make sure I review that before. So it's outside of curriculum. It's just a tool to use to determine how well the curriculum's working.
So the pretest, how well, I mean, if our scores went down for the actual test, and we had time to recognize those are.
The pretest
must have been bad.
The pretest is always going to be bad because it's a fourth grade test.
Is that the only, okay,
So what the readiness test is, so the fourth graders are tested. They're given the same level test at the beginning of the year that they'll have at the end of the year. So in a lot of ways, that's going to look bad because they haven't had a year of teaching.
Right.
But there is some carryover from third grade. That allows us to determine what that carryover is. It also gives us a baseline. So if the kids are here and they don't grow very far, well, that's a problem. They're here and they grow far, that's where we expect them to be. So that mid-test that they're going to take in February, that will then show, okay.
whether you're gaining ground or not.
Yeah, or, hey, they did horrible in this section. Well, yeah, I haven't taught that yet.
Right.
Or they did great in that, or they did horrible in this section and, oh no, I taught that. I need to go back, make sure that they get back to where they are.
So that leads into my next question. So once you get the scores and y'all are breaking them apart, whatever, you dig down to the level of the teacher and say, okay, your student is terrible in English, whatever. And go to that teacher and say, okay, what's the problem? Where's the breakdown?
And that would allow, and it gives us three points. So now we have
Right.
how they were at the beginning, how they were kind of in the middle, and then when they get that final test, we can see, and it could be, and here's the other thing, there are some advantages in being in Bradford, and one of the biggest disadvantages is our kids equal a lot. So let's just say when they're taking, and I know that there are teachers that tear apart, when they get the test scores back, they're looking at every individual student. This kid did better than we expected. This kid did worse than we expected. And maybe that kid who did worse, well, yeah, his parents just got divorced the week before the test. We know that, but that kid's going to count for 3%. Right. So if we're 3% lower than where we should have been, maybe that might be why. So it does, if the kid's up here in February and is down here when they take the test,
Something else going on.
we might be able to determine if there's something else going on. So it does give us, what we like about the readiness test is it's apples to apples to apples versus a test that the textbook company came up with.
Right.
That might not be apples. So, any other questions?
I have one. So does the test scores reflect our student achievement, our curriculum, or our teachers' ability to teach? That's why I'm a little bit confused, is where is the struggle at? Do we not have the right curriculum that lines up with the expectations? Or our teachers don't have the tools to teach
I
as
don't,
needed?
I don't want
How
to
do
give
you compare that
excuses.
apart?
I don't want to give excuses, and I don't want to make it sound like excuses, because we have to deal with what we have to deal with. But one of the things that we took a look at off of the report cards is we have the highest rate in 2 counties of students that are identified with disabilities. And we have the 3rd highest in 2 counties with students with socioeconomics. So we have that coming in. We've got students who have a lot more problems, or a lot more, I don't want to say problems, they have a lot more issues that they're dealing with than, say, the average state student. That makes it a little bit more difficult for our teachers to deal with that. I mean, that's the nature of teaching at Bradford.
When you look at the similar districts, does that not take that into consideration? What is the similar districts then? Is it socioeconomic? Is
I
it
haven't seen it.
size, or what are we comparing our?
Traditionally, they try to take those 3 things into account. Basically, the size of the district, how many students are in your building, how many of those are disability or on IEPs, how many of those are socioeconomically disadvantaged. What generally happens is they take the size of this community and put us in with a Russia and a Versailles and a
population base.
population
Like if you
base as opposed to
If you take,
the percentages of the other 2.
if you take us in Newton, 2 similar sized communities, and you were comparing us, we have students who are identified with disabilities. 1 out of every 5 of our students here have been identified with some sort of learning disability. Newton is 1 out of 20. So that's going to play a factor. That's why I can't wait to see what EVOS looks like, because in some cases, our kids may be making more than a year's growth. And last year we had great value added numbers. Our kids were making growth, even though they may not be passing the test. So they're starting here. Our teachers are bringing them up, but they're always going to be falling behind. It's difficult to bring a kid who has never been in preschool. I've sat in some of our kindergarten beginner classes where kids can't count past 10. In other districts, some of those kids are coming in knowing how to read. I'm not making excuses, but that's a factor that needs to be, thank you, taken into consideration when we take a look at this.
So for us, what tools and resources are needed for that group of students? I think that's what
I
we
think
should
we,
be.
honestly, I think we have what we need.
Okay.
I really do. There are factors that we can't control. We can't control what happens when a student leaves our building. We can't control what happens before they get here. I mean, I've been in 4 other different districts, and we have, in my personal opinion, we have what we need. We just need to start. The Restart Readiness is something that we introduced last year, and it was more of an introduction. This year, it's more of a, okay, let's really start tearing this data apart and what's it giving us and how can we utilize this in the classroom. So I think it's just a progression of building on top of what we already have.
The biggest thing, to answer your question, the biggest thing I think the biggest silver bullet that would increase test scores is and this is a community thing, an emphasis on the importance of the tests. And I'll give you an example. We had a 3rd grade student last year who bombed the reading test. Mom found out that that student was going to be held back because that student didn't meet the 3rd grade guarantee. Student came in and took the test over the summer and did an excellent job. That student was then, between there, was told
Promoted.
by mom, you need to take this test seriously. We have kids that will go through the test as quickly as possible. We've even tried to incentivize taking your time on the test, because these kids, like one of the things in our career readiness, which I think will allow our career readiness scores to go up, is we're allowing opt-outs now for the ACT. This year's the first year for opt-outs for the ACT. Before, you've got kids in the Career Center who aren't planning on going to college. To them, the ACT is 2 hours that if the sooner they get done, the sooner they get to go home because they got the rest of the day off.
Or go back to the career center and work on the trade that they want to work on.
Or go back to their internship and make money. They don't care about the ACT and they shouldn't care about the ACT. They'll never need it. But the state of Ohio is saying, not only is every kid taking it, we're also going to judge you by how well your kids do. And when the kids are just going through, and that's probably one of the biggest frustrations. You could have the best teacher in the world, but if that kid isn't motivated to do well on the test, and a teacher can only do so much towards that motivation, then our test scores are, I mean, like I said, our teachers can go through that list of students and they can tell you how the kids, they think the kids should have done and how they shouldn't. We have gone through those lists and been able to say, wow, I can't believe that kid did as poorly on that test. And so I think there is a motivation issue there that if our kids were a little bit more motivated, and I'll be honest, when I was in the classroom, students had to pass a test in order to graduate. They don't have to now.
They only have to pass 2 of them.
Right. So that was at least an incentive that they knew that if they wanted to walk across that stage, they had to pass that test. We don't even have that now.
Does a student's success in the classroom, their testing and the results of the curriculum we're providing match or not match the
There's
testing at the end? So that's either motivation
there's some
Or
disconnect there.
There's some disconnect there.
or not.
Mhm.
Does our curriculum have those standards? So meaning we're testing the information that needs to be tested and they have success at that. And then if they fail at the state testing, which would tell you it would be more of a motivation. I can just remember back, you talked about, the fourth graders, they took the test and they weren't even taught some of it.
Mhm.
I can remember the test anxiety of standardized tests in high school. And, you came into the fact realizing that you're going to take a test and you're not going to know anything about it,
Mhm.
which doesn't work very well when you get into college and doesn't work very well
Right.
when you're doing those MCATs or other tests where you're expected to know that and you're tested on stuff that you would be expected to know. I thought sometime the feeling I had when I was in school was I was tested on stuff and I wasn't going to know it because we didn't have it.
Yeah.
Is that it? Is that a perception that our students get? And does that create the lack of incentive, realizing that they're not testing on stuff I never even heard of?
No.
Which,
I don't think it's that. I mean, there's always going to
Really,
be, there's always going to be some, and to be honest, one of the games that teachers play is, okay, I'm not, there's the argument of thoroughness versus breadth, depth versus breadth. You cover everything this much, or do you cover some of these things this much? So teachers will play around with that. If there's only been one question on a standard,
on the state test.
on the state test, I might say, you know what? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that one when I can spend a lot of time on this. So there's always that. State of Ohio is, I know this in social studies, have never met a social studies standard they didn't like. They kept adding social studies standards instead of taking them away, and they don't give you any more time to teach what they're adding. So there's always going to be some content that may not get covered. But the majority of the content is getting covered. So our students are seeing this. And the great thing about the readiness test is it does give us an idea of, okay, this is an area that maybe we don't have to spend as much time on. So I think part of the problem is, it's a motivational factor. And we see it across the board. I mean, you can see it in some of our sports. You can see it in some of our, I don't know.
I had a situation last year walking down the hallway prior to the geometry test. And, I was talking to some of the students and I heard a couple in front of me say, oh, we get to go take the geometry test, but we don't have to pass it, we'll still graduate. So.
yeah, so it's about, I think for us, it's important that we've supplied you guys with the toolkit, provide the teachers what they need to teach.
I think
so that-
by and large, absolutely. I do think we, do have what is valuable in order to be successful.
Now we need leadership and motivation for getting the kids engaged,
Yeah.
enthused in the opportunity.
Yes.
And that's, in some
That's where you
cases,
guys get the art of
and
teaching.
that's some cases is the hardest part of it is getting the kids to take what we feel they should take it
A lot of
from.
that starts at home. I mean, they just don't.
And that's the other issue that, you know, if the parents took the tests as seriously as we did, I think our scores would be much higher.
That's a difficult barrier to overcome.
But at the end of the day, you know, our students are still walking out of this building prepared to be successful in life. I mean, I haven't shaken a hand in the last 3 years of a student that I didn't think was going to be successful.
Which is important.
Yeah.
Just
Do
to
you
elaborate
think with the increase in students choosing to go to the Career Center or take Edison classes earlier and earlier, which seems to be happening more so and less students, is that going to play an effect, positive or negative?
The Edison students, maybe if we have a few more taking it at the freshman, sophomore level, possibly. We have all of our testing completed for the state before they go to the Career Center.
We,
Okay.
like, when you were in school, you took
It's like
government.
even from an ACT perspective though, and like that college readiness
Yeah.
score, you would think that that is gonna start to change, maybe not negatively, but you would start to think that that's gonna affect the numbers as kids choose to go to more trades and get into those
Which
skills that they enjoy more
Which-
so.
I think, and this is the conspiracy theorist in me. You know, it's been on the report card for a while, but I have these discussions with curriculum leaders in other school districts in the counties. And as the more affluent school districts are seeing some of their kids that normally would be college bound going into trades, I think that's why you're starting to see now, oh, we're gonna allow them to opt out of the ACT. Because we don't want those scores counted against our report cards, but that's just,
That's why I guess when you said that, it was like,
yeah.
you know, it's,
But I think we,
We used to have to take the ACT in 2 days because you can only have so many students sitting in a classroom at one time. We don't think we'll have to use 2 days this year. I'd be shocked if we have to use 2 days for the ACT this year.
well, and more universities aren't really
Well,
putting
you're
in
right.
a high of an importance on the ACT
You don't
score,
even
which
have
I
to
think
submit
will
it.
also make kids choose to not take it more.
Yes,
Right.
agreed.
Right. It is one moment in time. Is what it is.
It is. It is, and it's a lot of preparing for that one particular
I mean, there's
moment in time.
right, and there's skills that you need to learn to be successful at just a process, as opposed to having content. You can have a lot of content knowledge and still do poorly on the score.
Oh, yeah.
Because you just haven't figured out how to navigate the
Mhm.
testing.
I appreciate you asking if we have the tools, though. I mean, that is something that is valuable in terms of, you know, what we have. But I do feel, and I think Brian would agree, that we do have the necessary, you know, resources to continue to make progress, even though we took a little slip backwards. But I feel good about what we're doing.
We'll be encouraged to see your guys' results and to follow up on what you figured out after you get all the details.
Yeah, I wasn't looking forward to giving today's report. I'm really kind of hoping next year, I'll be really looking forward to it because I'll have all this great news to say.
But it's important that the kids are successful. I mean, that learning, that's what we're shooting for.
Yeah.
But life is a grade card, you know, as we move forward.
Mhm.
So we have to teach them how to do that as well. And maybe learning how to take it seriously because their careers at the end, they're going to need to take it a little more seriously.
And I'm biased, but you know, I would still put our kids with how they do on their report card against the kids in any other school district in this area.
You're still up.
Oh, I'm still
Thanks.
up.
Yep.
you're still up.
Michelle's not feeling well today.
Okay. So, for the elementary report, we've had a couple field trips. We actually had one field trip get canceled because of poor weather. We didn't get a lot of rain this fall, but one of the days we got rain, first grade was supposed to go, no, just first grade or second grade. One of the grades was supposed to go to Charleston Falls and they couldn't. But our kindergarten, we were able to take the kindergarten to Broomall's Fruit Farm. So there's some pictures there. And then I was hoping the second grade teachers would have stuck around because they took the kids to La Comedia to see the play Duck for President, which I don't know much about the play.
It was going over the process.
Of how a president's elected, but I will say this, the kids dressed as if they were going to La Comedia. So they were all wearing their Sunday church clothes. They all looked really cute. They were really well behaved there. And I think they were really excited to go. And then we had our school parade there. There's some pictures from the school parade. Beautiful weather for the parade this year. Just kind of nice. So. And then finally, this week last week was Fire Safety Week, but it's also Pumpkin Show. So we always do Fire Safety Week the week afterwards. So we're treating this week as Fire Safety Week. The fire department has been able to come in. They came in 2 days to talk to our kids and teach them fire safety. And I think it was pretty entertaining. I could hear the kids yelling in the auditorium, so they were definitely interactive with the fire department. But Chris Hensley led it, and he did an excellent job.
All right, for the junior high school, we had homecoming a couple weeks ago. We always have homecoming and pumpkin show back to back, so it's a very crazy couple weeks. Had an amazing homecoming court, and then Miss Megan Wood and Owen Cannon were our king and queen. Two great kids, actually the whole court, amazing kids, all together. And we didn't have any issues at homecoming dance or any issues afterwards or any issues, period, so that was great. One of the things that the Darke County, Carla, what's the name of the Darke County?
Center for the Arts?
No,
Or is that-
Economic, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they always put on a manufacturing day, and each school in Darke County goes and visits a particular factory. And one of the biggest things is, when our students think of, a factory, they don't realize that there's also accountants there, insurance people, human resources, all the types of different jobs that you can have and be employed there. So we went and toured Midmark. This is actually the second year in a row that we toured Midmark. It was actually kind of cool for me to see it for the second year in a row because they have made some changes and some different things. But our kids did an amazing job going through, and they had a lot of questions, very interested in, what Midmark does and, what they produce, and then just the other outside, not outside, but the other jobs inside, the engineers and the IT department and human resources. So it was kind of cool. I walk around with certain groups and just kind of listen to the students, and our kids asked some really good questions that I was really impressed with. Again, pumpkin, I don't know why this showed up like this, but the pumpkin show parade, Crystal Yanks puts together the pumpkin show parade. She does a phenomenal job. It actually, it's something that you wouldn't think would take a whole lot. At least I didn't think the first time I went through it would take that long to put together, but it actually does. And her and I talked multiple times throughout the course of the week. And we were, this week, or last week's parade was the best one that I've been through in terms of time, and there was no stoppage, and we had more students involved in it than previous years where we've had kids opt out and they don't want to go on it. It was run very, very smoothly, and everybody got home okay and had a good time about the show. Last slide here for me is our Student Leadership Council, which is basically student council. We call it leadership too, because these are the leaders of our district. They want to start putting together just some fun things for the students during lunch, different activities. We're going to have a costume kind of contest during Halloween, which I've agreed to do against my better judgment, but there's many, many stipulations. But one of the things was a pie eating contest that we did last week was fitting pumpkin pie. Actually, no, yes, it was yesterday. It was pumpkin pie. Junior high and high school, we have a pie eating contest. Students really got a kick out of it, and the winner gets a nice little gift for winning that. But just something to make the day, something to look forward to, something to see your friends do. They're going to do trivia also during lunch a couple times, just to kind of keep the day, not so much just add a little fun and flavor to it. All right, upcoming events. We have the blood drive coming up on Thursday, and then we have next week, all next week is National School Bus Safety Week. Parent-teacher conferences for the Career Center, so if your child goes to the Career Center, next Tuesday and Thursday, they have parent-teacher conferences. The end of our first quarter is next Friday, which is hard to believe that we are a quarter of the way done with the school year. Athletic Boosters meets on the 29th. On the 31st, which is kind of cool that it just happens to be on Halloween Day, is, they have trick or treat at night, but we also will have the Halloween parties for the elementary, and then the middle school, high school costume contest. PTO meets on the 2nd of November already. Daylight savings is on the 3rd. Election Day is on the 5th. On the 6th, 2-hour early release for professional development. And then on the 7th, we don't have school on the 7th and 8th. Of 7th, we'll have parent-teacher conferences all day long so that we hit all the different shifts of the workday. And then Veterans Day is that Monday when we come back on the 11th. So I'll be talking to our FFA chapter, see what kind of program that we will put together for Veterans Day. Any questions?
And I never really even thought about this. I think we may have talked about it one time, but the Student Leadership Council that Mr. Barr brought up, that's run by Mr. Cannon and myself. You did a decent job of talking about it, but I want to talk about it a little bit more because we're doing a lot more cool stuff than what he mentioned. We did do a pie eating contest yesterday, and the whole point behind that is to make Mondays suck less, essentially. So we have met up with the Renaissance group at from National Trail twice now. We went back last year in like February or March, and they had this huge event for all the other schools in our area that are considering Renaissance, trying something like it, that kind of thing. And then they actually came to us 2 or 3 weeks ago. The one teacher that is in charge of it, and she brought a few students with her because they had like a PD day or something, and talked about it. And that's one of their big themes for the year is to do something, not every single Monday, obviously, because it's a lot, but a couple Mondays a month to do something to get the students engaged so that they're excited to come to school on a Monday and not just kind of dreading the entire 5-day week that is to come. So yesterday was our first Make Monday More Exciting day with a pie eating contest. And the junior high kids loved it. Like they ate it up. It was hilarious. They were screaming for each other. The high school kids were a little more reserved, which we kind of thought was going to happen. But then we have a few more that we've talked about doing. I think we're going to possibly break out the ice cream machine next month because it's National Dessert Day or something on a Monday. We are going to do the Halloween costume contest, but the basis behind that is that the little ones are going to trick or treat to the high school kids and do a parade in their costumes. So we can all kind of be together right before they do their Halloween parties in their classrooms. We did a couple cards so far. So it was like National Custodian Appreciation Day. So our kids made a big giant card and had everybody at lunch sign it and put it back on the maintenance doors. Things like that to recognize people and get a lot of our kids kind of out of their shells and doing things that they wouldn't normally be comfortable with. We have about 12 high school kids and a couple of junior high kids that are involved in it as well. Because we did absorb student council. So we aren't exactly Renaissance like National Trail is. We are still Student Leadership Council, Student Council. But we're trying to get to the level that they're at. I mean, they're insane. They do some amazing things. We obviously don't have the student body behind that yet, but eventually we hope to be close to what they're doing. But yeah, and we will be doing the Texas Roadhouse roll sale here next week. We'll start that and some other stuff. So we've got a lot going on with that, but kind of went off on a tangent because Mr. Barr brought it up. I'm sorry. It's something Mr. Cannon and I have been working on for a few years and trying to get it kind of going in a good direction. So, but athletically, so we're wrapping up
the end of the fall sports season, it is quickly approaching. We only have a few things left to wrap up the season. This week, high school will be hosting Tri-Village, or football will be hosting Tri-Village. Junior high on Thursday, high school on Friday, and that is senior night for all of the sports except for volleyball. Because volleyball, they have their own that they do in here. But all the other fall sports will be recognized on Friday night for senior night. And then Saturday morning, cross country will go to Cedarville and run at districts. The boys are at 10, the girls are at 11. Volleyball is going to be going to Newton to play Covington at 2 o'clock, and that's their sectional tournament game. And then next week, we have high school football finishing up their season at Arcanum, and basketball and powerlifting will be starting here the next couple weeks. It's crazy, but it's almost over. Well, next slide. We did have volleyball senior night a couple weeks ago. We just had 2 seniors. That was Kaylin Richard and Megan Wood. We played Tri-Village, and honestly, we played Tri-Village very, very well. We didn't win on senior night, which is always a bummer, but the girls came out and they played extremely well that evening. And then this is our WOAC all-conference kids so far. We don't have the football done yet because they won't vote until after the season is over, but for volleyball, we have Chloe Hawker made second team, and Addie Mills was special mention. For cross country, Emma Levy is our first team member. She ran a phenomenal race at Tri-Village on Saturday. She was 5th. She was just in like straight up beast mode. She ran so well. And then Daphne was our special mention for cross country, and Eli Hoffman also was special mention for cross country. And then Trail Manual was also special mention in golf. So we'll have football here in a few weeks. I'll have to share with you at the meeting. I think that was it. Any questions?
That's great. Thank you. Mr. Hurst?
I have a very short report. 3 things to share out here. The hallway project is finding roadblocks. The folks we hope we would have come in either at Thanksgiving or Christmas are not excited with the timelines that we're giving them. So I'm worried about the outlook and how fast that will move, but we will get there for sure. I'm going to skip this, switch around a little bit here. The access road, I think we're waiting on just a good non-rainy day for the pavement at this point. They've got the curbs poured. We've got to ask a couple questions about the curbs at this point, but I believe everything's ready to roll as far as asphalt goes. They were up here on Saturday and prepping everything ready to go. Senate Bill 29 is a new law that has just come into effect recently. It was late June, early July. It went into, signed into law, and now it's going to be in effect as of October 24th. This is going to be something, we're still working through some of the details on it. We will be sending out a letter next week to all the parents that will basically say that as your students are here at school, we are going to track their computer technology activity through these different programs, and we're going to make sure that they stay safe as long as they're using anything related to Bradford's technology. We will be tracking that at home and anywhere that they would be logged into our accounts. So if they are, for some reason, on self-harm sites, we will get notified. We will be able to tell the parents that, hey, there's an issue, you need to look into this and follow that up very quickly. The way the bill was written, the way the law was written, I think they probably, I don't know as though lawmakers ever mess up, but I think this is one of those situations where they probably overwrote the law, and we're working through some issues with what the law actually says versus what we think the law actually means. We met with Steve Huffman. He was one of the legislators at our meeting a week and a half ago now, and he basically explained that was the reason for the law. But the way the law is written is anytime that we track a student's activities on the computer, we're supposed to send a notice to the parents. Not any time that there's an issue with what the kids are finding, we send a notice, but anytime we are tracking the students, we send a notice. If we go by the letter of the law, parents are literally going to get anywhere between 10 and 50 emails a day saying, we tracked your students' progress this way. So we're working with legal counsel, we're working with BASA, we're working with OSBA, we're working with other superintendents all around the state of Ohio to overcome what seems to be a major issue right now. Everybody thinks that this law is going to be changed as soon as they reconvene after the elections. But we've got a period, obviously, between October 24th and when that gets changed, that we've got to make sure we're not breaking the law, but make sure we're not losing important things in the mix. So that is all I have for my report, unless you have questions.
Any questions? Thanks, Joe. Great. Carla, you have a treasurer's update?
Just a couple things I wanted to let you know. As we've talked before, public records training is required for all of you for every time there's a change to the board. So you would think that'd be every 2 years, but we've had some changes. So I've appointed as your person to handle that. So that is handled until we go through another election or changes, which we hope does not happen. So looking forward to having you all as long as we can and working towards having that records training up to speed. And I do that because we'll be going through audit here shortly, trying to make sure that we've got everything in place for that. I haven't heard from them, but I'll be contacting them if I don't hear shortly. This year, every 5 years, we go through a food service administrative review. And we are working through a situation where we have some additional funding in the food service, which needs to be for upgrades. We've done a lot of upgrades in that kitchen. We're going to continue to do upgrades in that kitchen, and that's one of the things that's going to facilitate them. One of the things that came up tonight when these gentlemen were talking, and I wish Michelle could have been here, because you were talking about preschool and how that affects later on in life. And I know that's been a concern of Mrs. Levy. And that's one reason why we got into the preschool grant. And we're still working to try to do that, because the main focus of that is to introduce more education into those lower level students, so they're more prepared for the school as they enter into that. So that's one of the drivers of these grants, is a way to facilitate things that this district wants to do. And I know that Mr. Hurst and I put together our list of things that we need to do and need to complete. And there are 17 items of major consequence that we wish to get put together. So we're looking at that on a daily basis and trying to get some of those things taken care of. And we do have some more grants that I think will be coming as we work through some things. We think we've got this solar grant. We just don't know to what value that is, but that'll be introducing solar panels to more of the roof. So we're working through things and trying to improve and trying to create a link to education with all those items that we're doing. So with that, I'm finalizing my report.
Sounds great. Any questions for Carla? Thanks for all you do. And next is public participation. I have no list. So next is approving our various items tonight. Next item for approval was the financial reports from the treasurer, items 1 through 15. So Carla, if you could give us a high-level overview of what you want us to approve.
Items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those are all typical monthly work, and they're available for people to read. We have some donations out there for the Bryant Byers Memorial Scholarship Fund. The $500 for Bryant Byers, $100 for student lunches. We have $1,600 given for Lego robotics. We have $225 from Backyard Team Apparel for Bryant Byers. We have another $3,000 given for scholarships from BD Transportation. And then 12 is not typical. We're going to be paying a conduit of money to the Bradford Youth Association, which really, had things been differently, would have been paid directly to them. Received a grant of $3,600 for the Ohio K-12 network, and change fund of $200, and disposal of textbooks that are no longer valuable to the school district or the education thereof.
Okay, Carolyn. Do a motion to approve the presented items? So moved. Thanks, Scott. And a second?
Second.
Thanks, Trey. Any questions regarding those? If none, then roll call for approval, please.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Dr. Swab,
Yes.
Mr. Biesecker,
Yes.
Mr. Manuel.
Yes.
Next is, we have no old business, but the new business items to review, items 1 through 11. So could you give us a high-level overview of what you'd like us to approve?
Certainly. And those of you following online, the agenda should be on our website if you wanted to follow along with that too. First of all, we've got some employments, including a gymnastics coach volunteer. That's new to the list this year. We have a student that wants to do some gymnastics, and this will allow her to compete under the Bradford name. The yearbook thing under D, they're going to split between Mrs. Estes and Ms. Fair. The youth science and the interpreter are going to be added to the Dark County ESC contract. We got a reduction in the spectrum bill. Thank you, Cody, for working on that by signing a contract and reduced our monthly bill by $95. So way to go. The next resolution allows us to purchase a bus if we so choose this year under the EPC. I don't know if this is a true possibility. We're looking at grants and those type of things, but at least this opens the door. Number 5 is a resource coordinator service. This is free of charge for the district, but it'll help families if in need find resources out there, food stamps, counseling, mental health, those type of things. Number 6, we've done a lot of exploration on what to do with our training services, and Upper Valley Medical Center is where we're recommending at this point to go. We talked about the 9-year contract or commitment with them. There is a clause in the contract that every 2 years we reevaluate that, so there's an out. 7 is National Convention. Way to go, guys, for FFA. Number 8, Career Connections Coordinator. That is helping our students through Miami County find careers as they go on. Number 9 is a step increase for Mrs. Serber and I. Number 10, backup appliance for our storage, online storage. Huge change from what we were replacing was going to cost us a little better than $10,000. Cody found another solution for just under $3,000 to do the same thing. So we very much appreciate what Cody does for us. Absolutely does wonders for our district. And then the last one, Chloe has been working hard. You each have a picture, a mock-up of what the football record board would look like in our hallway. It's going to look like similar to this. Of course, it'll have individual people on there, individuals' pictures with all the individual records that they would have set. But that is number 11, not to exceed $4,500.
Thanks. So a motion to approve the items presented.
So moved.
Thanks, Holly. And a second?
Second.
Thanks, Trey. Any discussion or questions over Joe's presentation? If none, then a roll call for approval.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Dr. Swab,
Yes.
Mr. Biesecker,
Yes.
Mr. Manuel.
Yes.
We have no executive session this evening. Next, I guess, we can adjourn and then we'll just do our fraud education requirements. We have a motion for adjournment,
So move.
right? And a second.
I want somebody. Second.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Roll call for adjournment.
Mrs. Hill,
Yes.
Dr. Swab,
Yes.
Mr. Bisecker,
Yes.
Mr. Manuel.
Yes.
And adjourn at
7:40.
7:40. Thanks, everybody, for your time and input.